Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of cohesive, cogent cogitation on whatever tickles our fancy.
Today we'll be discussing Book 2, Chapter 7 of Gardens of the Moon, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. This is not a book review, and it's not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that Kamraun and I think that this is the greatest fantasy series that's ever been written, so we will not be providing critique.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
And a quick warning, as always, today's episode will contain some descriptions of violence, and it's probably not recommended for children.
I had one little bit of feedback to add before we get started today.
Okay.
One of our Patreon subscribers named Scott reached out to me.
Nice.
He was commenting on our discussion of Hannibal a couple episodes ago. And he agrees that Hannibal is lawful evil.
Right.
But this is what's really good about this, okay? He was doing voice to text when he sent me that, and he said he agrees that Hannibal is waffle evil.
Waffle evil.
So, to me, from now on, I'm putting this in the HorseFrog dictionary. Lawful evil will now be referred to as waffle evil from now on.
Thank you, Scott, for that brilliant addition to our ever-growing HorseFrogopedia. Waffle evil. Do we have to come up with a new description for waffle evil, or is that just like
that's just what it is?
It's not atrocities committed to waffles. It's just when I think about waffling, I think about going back and forth. That'd be more like chaotic evil, but you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Scott.
As always, we appreciate the feedback. All right, Chapter 7. The chapter begins with another dream for Krupa. He notes that all is in flux, and the coin has entered a child's possession, though he knows it not. Back to the point on Krupa subduing his humility in a burlap sack hanging from a tree, he thinks, fortunate that Krupa's perfectly round body is an example of perfect symmetry. One is not only born skilled at said balance, one must learn it through arduous practice. Of course, Krupa is unique in never requiring practice at anything. He notices a small fire drawing his attention, and he will make his way there. There is some grumbling regarding too many stones on the road turning underfoot, and that he'd be better off walking on the ribbed earth. The fire beckons him. Krupa notices a hooded figure at the small fire. Their face is hidden in shadow. It appears that the hooded figure actually has his fingers in the flames. Krupa says, I would partake of this warmth, so rare within Krupa's dreams of late. The figure remarks, strangers wander through them, such as I. Have you summoned me then? It has been a long time since I walked on soil. Krupa informs the hooded figure that he didn't summon him. Krupa is also a victim of his dreams, and says he is cold, nay, chilled. The figure laughs and beckons Krupa to the fire, and says, I seek sensation once again, but my hands feel nothing. To be worshipped is to share the supplicant's pain. I fear my followers are no more. We'll dive more into this relationship between the gods and their followers more over time. And I think it's really interesting the way it's done in these books.
It is. I don't know of any other books where there's actually relationships between gods that we actually know. That's what I love about this series is that we actually have gods and then you have gods that you actually get to know some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, most series I've read you never have that they're mentioned, and you might meet them kind of occasionally, but they're just real abstract for the most part.
I can't think of any off the top of my head. Yeah, I think you're right.
In the Elric series, those books, of all of these series of Michael Moorcock has with Eternal Champions, there is interactions with some Lords of Chaos and Lords of Order, because that's the big two contending factions in the universe. And so you'll have some interactions with them, and Elric slays, and a lot of Eternal Champions slay gods. So that's the only other one I can think of.
Okay. Krupa holds his hands out to the fire and notes the lack of heat. After a little discussion, Krupa intuits that this being is an elder god and asks their name. The figure introduces himself to Krupa as Krull. Krupa stiffens at the confirmation of his suspicions and asks Krull how he got here. Krull informs Krupa that blood has been spilled in Darujistan on holy ground that belongs to him. He then explains that he used to reign in the minds of many mortals, and they fed him well with blood and split bones. Long before the first towers of stone rose to mortal whims, I walked among the hunters, he says. Now, do you agree that this is referring to a more mobile hunter-gatherer type of society as opposed to settled civilization?
That's what I would think, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what they probably would have been at some point.
Right.
Before they settled.
Krull explains that blood has been spilled, but that is not enough to summon him. He believes that he is here to await one who will be awakened, one I have known before, long ago. Krupa asks Krull, and what do you bring Krupa? He tells Krupa he will hold him to nothing, and says, seek the Talan Imas, who will lead the woman. They are the awakeners. I must prepare for battle, I think, one I will lose. Krupa realizes something and says, you're being used. Krull says, perhaps. If so, then the child gods have made a grave error. After all, I will lose a battle, but I will not die. Play on, mortal. Every god falls at a mortal's hands. Such is the only end to immortality. Again, it's an interesting statement regarding the relationship between gods and mortals.
It is, and the way that I take this statement, and I feel that this is such a unique concept, is that their gods can be the victims of their followers unintentionally or intentionally.
They're kind of beholden to them. Yeah, and we really are going to have to wait until some of this stuff happens in the books before we really dive into it, I think. I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but it is a give and a take on both sides, really. Yeah,
it is.
Krull leaves Krupa. Krupa is uncomfortable with the information imparted to him. He mutters, in the hands of a child. This night, Krupa is truly alone in the world. And he's referring to the coin being in the hands of a child, right?
Right, yes.
Okay, yeah. We are taken to Darujistan. Circle Breaker is reflecting on his past shift where no further rendezvous occurred. As he walks, he observes a lightning storm in the Talon Mountains to the north. He walks towards the waterfront where there are merchant ships from Kalos, Ellengarth, and Kepler's Spite. He has removed his city guard tabard, and only his short sword at his belt marks him as a soldier. Circle Breaker had divested himself of his official duties, and as he walks, he reflects a little on his childhood memories of the area. He remembers the freeman privateers that used to hail from such mysterious ports as Filmin Oris, Fort by a Half, Dead Man's Story, and Exile. These names rang of adventure to a young boy who had never seen his home city from outside its walls. What I find amazing is that a lot of these locations that are peppered into these descriptions this early in the overall storyline are places that we'll get to see eventually.
Oh, I know it. The foreshadowing and things he led, especially as we dig deeper and deeper, you're like, man, I love these. I love all these little foreshadowing he does here. It's great.
Yeah. In particular, I think Dead Man's Story or Fort by Half and Exile, those kind of reminded me of, I think it was Orb Scepter Throne that was dealing with the southern part of Genebakis, and those kind of stuck out to me as locations that I think Esselmont goes into in that story.
I hope so, because the one that I have got, I got lost in the Jakaruka one, in the jungle section of it. I like a lot of that stuff though, because
Blood and Bone.
Thank you, Blood. That's where I am.
Yeah.
So, which is Orb Scepter is after that, I think.
I think it's before it.
Is it before it? Okay.
I think
I forget the names of those titles.
Return of the Crimson Guard. Then it's Stormbreaker. Is that what that one's called? Or Stormwielder?
Yes,
one of those two.
Stonewielder.
Stonewielder. That sounds right. Okay. Something along those lines. Starts with an S. And then I want to say Orb Scepter Throne was next. And then it's Blood and Bone. Then Assail is the last one.
Okay.
He reaches the pier and sits on the seawall. His gaze travels the slope, climbing to a summit and fixates on Majesty Hall. He thinks, never reach too far. This is a lesson he had learned early in life on the burning deck of a corsair when its belly was filling with the sea as it drifted outside the fortifications of a city named Broken Jaw. Hubris, the scholars would call the fiery end of the freeman privateers. He reflects on the deadlock in the council that had began with the councilman Lim's death on Lady Simtal's balcony. Turban Orr had his victory snatched from him with Lim's death and was flinging his hounds down every trail in search of the spies that had infiltrated his nest. The man was no fool.
I love how Lim's death and that just kind of popped up on Rallick and how that just caused all this stuff and caused those plans to collapse. And the palace intrigues in this series never feel secondary. I've read other books where they're kind of secondary and they don't really amount to much, but in Erikson's world, and also a shout out to the late great Frank Herbert as well in Dune, those palace intrigues meant something. The palace intrigues here mean something. They cost things, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. To be fair about the palace intrigue, Game of Thrones was all about that.
Is that what? Okay.
I mean, it's the Game of Thrones, so it's all palace intrigue pretty much. Betrayal, all the maneuvering, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I haven't said a lot of positive things about that series because I think this one's so superior, but the palace intrigue, that is a major component of it, for sure.
Yeah, and I had read another series that tried it and was not so good at it. I didn't read the entire series, but Terry Goodkin's Sword of Truth stuff. We actually had a television show made out of it called Legend of the Seeker, which was, CW version of this book series, but the book was not particularly good, but it tried intrigue and it was not so good.
Okay.
I love the series, but the intrigue was just kind of like, meh.
Mm. Circle Breaker pulls his gaze from Majesty Hall and thinks it's too late to concern himself about reaching too far. Ever since the Eel's agents had come to him, his fate was sealed. He reflects on the fact that what he is doing can be seen as treason, and maybe it was, since no one could say what was in the Eel's mind. Circle Breaker's contact professed ignorance on the Eel's plans. His thoughts return to Turban Orr. He thinks that he has set himself against a cunning man and a man of power. His only defense against Orr lay in anonymity, and that would not last. As he sits waiting for the Eel's agent, he thinks about the message he is prepared to send to the Eel, on whether it is right for him to risk his anonymity to request assistance from the Eel. But he knows he will need it to match wits with Turban Orr. He withdraws the note from his jerkin and thinks to himself that it was written in response to his ill-measured fear. It would be so easy to ask for help, an easy, desperate thing to do. He tears up the message he plans on delivering. As he does this, he thinks he hears a spinning coin. He leaves the docks and heads back to his home. On Lakefront Street, the silk merchants appeared, laying out their wares. He sees dyed twists from Ilum, Seta, and Lest. Now, the latter two cities had recently been annexed by the Panyan Seer in the last month. And again, this is what's amazing about this series. And this is the first time I'm noticing these connections, right?
Yeah.
He's already setting up what's happening in the third book here. This is all, and you wouldn't know it in advance unless you're coming back and kind of studying this in depth.
Yeah. And I'm like you. I mean, even the first time reading through and you get there, I don't remember the shout out because there's so much else to absorb in this series. It's like these little shout outs like the Panyan Seer. I'm like, ugh.
Oh,
man,
yeah.
Did your skin crawl at the mention of the Panyan Seer?
Some of the most horrific stuff you can imagine.
Yeah. It's just so gnarly. Ugh.
As he turns from the lake, it's noted that 4 streets ahead lay his single-room apartment on the second floor of a decaying tenement. It lay gray and silent with the coming dawn. In that room, he allowed no place for memories, nothing to mark him in a wizard's eye or tell the sharp-witted spy hunter details of his life. In that room, he remained anonymous even to himself. You have to think about the dedication it would take to live like this. What kind of motivation would you have to be willing to give up any family, any semblance of life to pursue a goal? What would be your motivation for that?
It's not just money, but I'm assuming it's just a deep patriotism for Darugistan.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's the only thing that I could think that would drive him.
Man.
I mean, isn't it?
Yeah, to sacrifice everything, like the joys of life.
Yes, it's not even. I guess love / patriotism is love. So I guess that covers love, but it's such a deep love of Darugistan and his patriotism to Darugistan, all the above. That that kind of love for a place, man. Wow.
These colors run deep, Billy.
Boy, you ain't kidding. It's gonna make.
It's almost like a Texas football team for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like college football.
I'm thinking more like high school, dude. I live in one of the. My
Well,
town
yeah, you
is,
live out.
I
Yeah,
have
I
a
got
small
you.
town.
Yeah.
We have a single high school here, and it's a. Let me tell you. Yeah, apparently it's pretty. It's and what's great is it's real close, so you can hear the announcer in my parking lot.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but these folks are pretty into it, I think. So
we go to Lady Simtal's estate in Darujistan. She's reflecting on how she is having to spend a lot of money to smooth over Councilman Lim's death on her balcony. Quote, that damn bitch of Limbs had not let grief get in the way of her greed. Barely 2 days shrouded in black, and then out on the courts hanging on that fop Murillo's arm, smug as a tart at a ball, end quote. I can only think it takes one to know one,
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this woman is a viper.
Oh, she's rough. Yeah, she's rough. What's funny when I hear the word tarts, I always think I'm going to remind us of a Guy Ritchie movie here. It's Snatch. You remember? Do you remember talking about the caravan they're going to buy him to fight for him? He goes, I wasn't looking to buy a mobile tarts palace, and the conversation gets dead still. And it's like, not that I'm calling your mom a tart. It's like, because they're about to kill him. But it's just like, that's Jason Statham too. He's so great in that movie. Those lines are fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm looking to buy a mobile tarts palace,
Yeah.
Not that I'm calling your mom a tart.
I think that was the first movie I saw. Was he in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. He is.
Okay, so that was the first movie I saw him in, and then Snatch.
I saw Snatch first.
Okay.
And I saw it by accident. My friends were coming over. It was a band night. We were going to practice. We did not practice. Everyone walked in the door right about the time the jewel heist is going on before the credits roll. And it's like, oh, what are we watching here? And it's like, I don't know, but let's just watch this. And we just watched it and just couldn't. Oh, it was a great night, man. What a great way to watch Snatch.
Yeah, I think I saw that in the theater.
Oh my word, that would have been great. That's a fan.
Yeah.
I showed KP that she loved it. And she doesn't like a lot of the things I like, especially as heist kind of stuff goes. But she loved Snatch. Snatch is great.
Yeah. It's hard not to like that movie.
Dude. Brad Pitt's accent alone is well worth it. And then also
Tyrone.
Tyrone.
Took a rally driving court to stop. We need to stop. We need to keep going. All right.
Sorry.
Diversions. Okay.
Divergence detected. It's like
that's the what we need. Not stay on target. We need diversions detected. That's better. Yeah. Okay. Simtal thinks that Murillo has a way of being seen and that he may be worth cultivation. She returns to a man on her bed. It's Turban Orr. It's noted that his heavily scarred forearm is covering his eyes, and those are presumably from his dueling exploits.
Yeah, I would have to assume that.
Orr tells her, I've told you all this. There's no knowing where that poisoned quarrel came from, Simtal. Hood's breath. Poisoned. What assassin uses poison these days? Vorkin's got them so studded with magic, everything else is obsolete. And again, it's important to note that Rallick is using poison when most other assassins have moved on. He's old school.
Definitely old school. And as we have found out, though, magic can be subverted. Look at Kamraun at Brooks House. Now, that's a level of magnitude versus other things, but it can be diverted.
Simtal is mad that Orr has not found out anything about Lim's assassination. Orr tells Simtal that Lim's death probably had nothing to do with her. Lim had his fingers in a bunch of pies. Simtal reflects that it was not a coincidence that Lim's death broke Orr's majority in the city council, on the night before the vote no less. This causes Orr's cheek to twitch. She walks over and sits on the bed and runs a hand on Orr's bared thigh. She asks if Orr has checked on him lately. Orr asks for clarification. Simtal says, "My beloved dispossessed, you idiot." Dude, the way she talks to people, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it must be all about her looks. I mean, why else would they keep coming around, you know?
Oh, yeah. I don't want to get it.
Orr smiles and tells Simtal he keeps an eye on him. He then tells Simtal her ex hasn't sobered up since she threw him out. And that kind of betrayal would crush most people.
Yeah, that would crush most folks. That would hurt, yeah.
Orr gets up to leave, and Simtal asks what he's doing. He says, "What's it look like? The debate rages on at Majesty Hall. My influence is required." After some further prying, Simtal rolls her eyes and says, "Oh, of course, the spy. I'd forgotten about him." Or thinks his proposal of neutrality with the Malazans will go through in the city council in the next couple of days. Simtol laughs harshly and says, "Neutrality? You're beginning to believe your own propaganda. What you want, Turban Or, is power. The naked, absolute power that comes with being a Malazan High Fist. You think this is the first step to paving your road into the Empress's arms at the city's expense, but you don't give a damn about that."
She's not just a pretty face either. She's also pretty sharp.
She's a viper.
Yeah, she's a viper, so she's pretty slick and sharp herself, too.
What I specifically meant by that statement was the way she talks to people is so condescending. I don't know why you'd want to be around her. She's not, doesn't have a nice personality.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean?
She's as friendly as a hand grenade, as they say.
Nice. Yeah. No, but she's definitely sharp. I mean, very manipulative, sees a lot of different angles. Yeah, I'm not taking away from her intelligence. I'm just saying, like, I don't know why you'd want to be.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you were, but some of this stuff here on the read-throughs sometimes is lost on me. I mean, I know that she's a sharp thing too. Mm-hmm. You know, she's no slouch in the intrigue department herself.
Or gets a little angry and tells her to stay out of politics. Darujistan's fall to the Empire is inevitable. Simtal thinks Or is wrong. She asks him if he has forgotten everything they heard about Pale. The ravens feasted on the delicate flesh of Pale's nobility for days. This empire devours noble blood, she says. Yes, it does. And I can't disagree with this tactic. We'll get more into this in the future.
Right. And I agree. I mean, it's like the Empress, when she does this stuff, when she does this culling of the nobility, boy, it does buy her a lot of favor. Mm-hmm. At the outset, it certainly does.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into politics today, but
yeah.
They keep talking about the top 1% and stuff. It's the same principle.
Oh, it absolutely is the same principle.
Or thinks that there was more there than what is seen on the surface. He explains that the Moranth had a deal with the Malazans, and that would not happen here. This refers to the Hour of Blood that they were given as retribution. Simtal steps up to a bedpost and touches the silver pommel of Or's dueling sword. She tells him he should just kill him. Or notices she is back to talking about her ex-husband and tells Simtal, "Your brain works with all the subtlety of a malicious child." He continues, "It's a wonder you wrested anything from that idiot husband of yours. You were so evenly matched in matters of cunning." Sick burn.
Wow. Right? Absolutely. I love that line. Or's a nasty piece of work. I love him too. Mm-hmm. As far as being a piece of villainous scum, yes, he's fantastic in this book.
He's a caricature of villainy, basically.
Yes. How do you imagine, what kind of mustache does this guy have?
It's got to be like a thin hair lip mustache,
the pencil
right?
Thin? Yes, I'm thinking the pencil thin.
I don't know if hair lip's the right word, but like, just very thin.
I'm thinking of that, like, that this one he's got twisting the end, as he's like,
I was thinking like very tightly groomed against the upper lip, very thin. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's funny.
Simtal says the easiest thing to break is a man's heart. Then lays down on the bed and stretches her arms, arching her back.
Is it arcing or arching? I'm sorry.
It's arching. Don't do it. This is not in debate. It's arching, okay?
Okay, sorry.
She then asks Or about Moonspawn. Or is momentarily distracted as his lizard brain activates when his gaze sweeps over her body. He reveals they're trying to make contact with the Lord of Moonspawn, but haven't had any success yet. Simtal says maybe the Lord of Moonspawn is dead, and that it may be just sitting there since no one remains alive inside. She asks, "Did you ever think of that, dear councilman?" He says, "They did," then asks if he'll see her later that night. She poutingly says, "I want him killed." Or says, "Maybe," and again asks if he'll see her later that night. She says, "Maybe." Or stands with his hand on the latch of the door for a moment, then leaves, and Simtal lays back on her bed, thinking about how to take Murillo from Lim's widow. It's horrifying that there are actually people like this out there in the world, And this character that she is, it's just pure evil.
Yeah, what a witch. Yeah, she's awful. She is just awful. But it's like, I love all these people here. It's like Orr is no better. He's just the same thing. He's a little more tactful. She's not very tactful. She wants what she wants, and apparently she, not only her brains, but it's not just the looks, but apparently she knows how to wield her weapon of sex very well. I'm assuming.
Yeah,
so
that's why she got where she's getting. Yeah,
to have Orr be begging, because he's wanting to know if he can come back for more again. It's like so she knows what she's doing there too. So
what was it they said? Rallick thought it was she gives the vice that few men can resist, or something like that in the last chapter.
Something like that.
I forget what the exact quote was. Yeah. Somewhere in Darujistan, Murillo is drinking spiced wine and talking with someone. He says the details are sketchy and is immediately distracted by a passing procession in the street below the balcony where he is seated. A brilliantly painted carriage is drawn by 3 white horses. The man gripping the reins is robed in black and hooded. The horses toss their heads, ears pinned back, eyes rolling. The driver held them in check. On either side of the carriage walked middle-aged women with shaved heads, atop which sat bronze cups that unfurled wavering streams of scented smoke. These descriptions of the horses. We had Kalam's ill-tempered horse earlier, and now these crazy ones,
Yeah. Erikson I wonder if he just really loves horses. I wonder if he has horses.
Loves them? They're always crazy, biting people, kicking people.
You and I, we mentioned him earlier, but again to ourselves, but horse face. Dude,
yeah. I had a bad experience with a horse when I was a kid.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, they're so big. They're magnificent creatures, but yeah, they're kind of scary because they're such big creatures.
Yeah. Murillo remarks, "The bitch Fander's being carted out. Bloody grim rituals, if you ask me. The wolf goddess of winter dies her seasonal death, on a carpet of white, no less. And in a week's time, the Getaron fate fills the streets with flowers, soon to clog gutters and block drains throughout the city." That would be a problem.
Yes, it would.
Murillo is with a young woman who smiles at his remarks and asks about the details Murillo is referring to. He asks her for clarification. She says, "The sketchy ones." He says, "Oh," and waves a hand dismissively, then mentions that the Simtal version of the story indicated Lim had visited her in person to acknowledge her formal invitation. The woman asks if he is referring to the festival Simtal is throwing on Getaron's Eve. Murillo, who is a master of manipulating the ladies, says, "Of course. Surely your house has been invited." The woman tells him, "Of course," and asks if he has also been invited. He tells her, "Alas, no." The woman is quiet, her eyelids lowering in thought. Murillo waited. Quote, "Such things, after all, moved of their own accord, and even he could not guess the pace or track of a woman's thoughts, especially when it had to do with sex. And this was most assuredly a play for favors, Murillo's best game, and he always played it through. Never disappoint them, that was the key. The closest held secret is the one that never sours with age." End quote. As Murillo is looking out over the street, he sees Rallick in a doorway opposite him and secretly begins motioning with his hand and glaring for Rallick to move on. Rallick smiles and strolls up the street, inspecting an array of pearls laid out on a table in front of a store. The proprietor takes a nervous step forward, then relaxes as Rallick continues on. Murillo thinks Rallick is an idiot. Everything about how Rallick is dressed and even how he moves screams that he is a killer.
And if all you people that listen to this show, please remember that he is doing this on purpose. He was directed to be seen.
Yes, that's correct.
So he is being seen on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Murillo reflects he cannot believe that a plan this subtle has come from Rallick. Regardless, the plan is genius. The woman with Murillo asks him, "Do you dearly wish to attend, Murillo?" This is what the plan hinges on, the invitation to the Getaron fate. And Murillo is so smooth here.
Yes, he is, man. He's the man.
First, he baits the woman by saying, "It's a large estate, isn't it?" The woman says, "Lady Simtal's? Indeed, fraught with rooms. I would expect a good many of the servants' quarters, though lacking in the simplest needs of luxury, will remain empty for much of the night." Murillo sets the hook, saying, "I would love to attend the ladies' festival, on one condition, that you will grace me with your company that night. For an hour or two, that is. I would not wish to impinge on your husband's claim on you, of course. The woman responds, of course, that would be unseemly.
Of course.
How many invitations do you require? Murillo tells her 2. It's best that he be seen with a companion. She agrees. Murillo begs his leave, and the woman tells him she admires his self-discipline. Murillo thinks, you won't on Getarone's Eve. Then tells her, the Lady of Chance has graced me with this meeting of ours. He bows and says, until the eve, Lady Or. Ooh, that's a plot twist.
Yes,
this is a dangerous game he's playing.
Yeah, because her old man is a pretty bad fella, as we find out.
As Murillo leaves, more than a few noble women's eyes watch him leave.
He's got to be a good-looking fella, too, if all the other ladies are watching him leave.
Yep. Rallick is being watched by guards as he walks through the streets. Ocelot told Rallick to make sure he was observed, as we mentioned earlier. Rallick thinks to himself that Murillo was of the opinion that only a blind man could ever mistake him for anything other than a killer, but Rallick had taken pains to achieve the obvious. So
yes.
Even Rallick knows how Murillo thinks of him, right? And he's gone above and beyond. Yeah.
I love it. I love it, dude. It's just, I'm curious how he's dressed. I have part of it in my mind, but I'm just curious what they would do with it if it was a movie.
Yeah.
big neon sign, I am a killer.
Yeah. Well, it's the picture of a killer, not necessarily what the actual killer is, right? So it's like the Hollywood version of an assassin, not what the actual ones do, right? So you'd have to do like, what do the real CIA assassins dress like versus what the ones in The Professional dress like or whatever, you know? It's like...
I agree wholeheartedly. That's too funny.
Yeah.
Oh.
Rallick notes the guards are cautious around him, but they do nothing. Giving the appearance of being a murderer wasn't the same as being one in truth. The city's laws were strict in such things. He thinks he's probably being followed, but that's fine. They may as well work to earn their money. Rallick has no sympathy for the nobles, but he doesn't share the commoners' hatred of them. After all, he has made good money off of all the contracts the nobility provide. Their constant airs, prickly honors, and endless squabbles made for good business. Yeah, that would be his customer base dropping off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They provide a big chunk of his money, I'm assuming.
Yeah. He thinks this will all end when the Malazans take over, unless you were deemed worthy enough to be recruited in the Claw. The nobles didn't fare much better than the assassins based on what he has heard from Pale. It will be a different world here when the Malazan Empire arrives, and he doesn't think he wants any part of it. He then wonders if Murillo was able to secure the invitations to Lady Simtal's party during the Getaron fete. Rallick knows Murillo is a little nervous in the event that he might have to duel Turban Or, but Rallick knows Murillo is no slouch when it comes to dueling. He even has begun to suspect that Murillo is an adept with blades due to their own sparring sessions, something Turban Or could not claim. Now, this concept of being an adept, do you interpret this as a natural talent, almost like someone who is a mage and has access to a warren, a deep, innate ability to master something?
Yeah, it's one of these things that they would have where they're not even aware of it, and they are directly using certain things, like that's kind of what they were using, things that people would have to study in that field of magic to be able to do what these guys just do, because they just are natural wielders of whatever. Okay. Is that kind of how you're thinking of it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Unless there's a sword warren.
There might be a sword warren. There probably is a sword warren, dude.
I don't even want to try and envision what that looks like.
Well, this is when I was told you about that series of Michael Moorcock series of Elric, and his blade was a demon. There is a realm where these demons are just they may have other appearances, and they most likely do, but what they would look like to us is basically swords, like maybe as an entity.
That's a mind-bending concept.
Yeah, it is. Hey, if you're a believer in the multiverse, you have to be open to the concept that there would be a realm where there would be sentient swords kicking it.
Wow. Okay. As he continues wandering, Rallick notices a familiar face in the crowd. Crocus is walking the streets. He's daydreaming about the young Darl girl he stole from the night before. He feels ashamed about having stolen from her because he feels that he has violated her, specifically her privacy, and he equates it to something tantamount to forcing himself on her. He has never put his thefts into this context before, but now he sees it. The hated nobility had shown him a face that now haunted him with its beauty, and tugged him in 100 unexpected directions. All right, I need to pause here. This idea bothers me a little bit because it's like, okay, so if she was ugly, you wouldn't feel bad about it?
Well, I think I believe that it's just because I think they're just showing us how smitten he is.
Yeah.
He's just smitten, and he's all of a sudden, well, I'm so in love with this woman that now, and I have violated her. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness! Now,
mental gymnastics.
Now everything I've been doing is so wrong. It's like so. I think he's just because he's trying to. I think he's just so smitten with her. It's just like it's all rainbows and unicorns right now.
Yeah. This part of the story I don't like.
Yeah, Crocus is bit. Yeah,
and I think part of it. Okay, so let me tell you, part of it is probably because I remember being a young man and I don't like this kind of stuff having this much control over my mind, and I was young once, and you have these unrealistic ideals or dreams or whatever. I think that's probably part of it.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of it.
I don't know. You have brought up a very good point when we're covering The Boys, how I would always be complaining about the choices our heroes are making. Like, I would say, I wish they had done this. I wish they had done that. It's like, I want them to do the right thing. You made the very valid point that they have to make mistakes so they can come back from it, right? They have to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he has to go through this.
He does.
Crocus starts to walk towards the rich part of town where the wealthy people live. He passes through Clove Gate and enters Osirk Narrow. As an aside, Osirk is the champion of High House Light. So that street is named after...
So Osirk, would he be the contemporary to Rake?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
He would have to be, because that's the champion of High House Dark is Rake, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crocus is met by a carriage moving quickly through the streets and has to jump out of the way as it passes. As the carriage passes him, the horses snap and kick, surging forward heedless of anyone or anything in their path. He easily recognizes the carriage as Turbine Oars. This guy's everywhere, man.
Absolutely. Well, schemes within schemes require a lot of legwork.
Yep.
A lot of legwork.
Mm-hmm. Crocus thinks the carriage horses matched Orr's contempt for those he supposedly served. As the carriage pulls into his estate, Crocus appears to be sizing up the place for a theft. There are 4 burly guards manning the gate. The wall of the estate rose 15 feet in the air and is topped with rusty iron cuttings embedded in sun-baked clay. And they do this in the Middle East and Africa using broken glass instead.
Yeah, they do that a lot in Mexico, and I guess I'm assuming South America as well.
Yeah, it's cheap and easy.
It's cheap and effective, yeah.
Until you throw a carpet over it.
Right.
That works on barbed wire, too, I think. You throw a carpet over it.
Exactly. I think you're correct. Yes, that and razor wire, I believe, would be.
Yep. Crocus enters a side street, scoping out for any other entrance. He finds a single service door in the wall. He's traveled half the length of the alley when suddenly a hand closes on his mouth and turns him around. It's Rallick Nom. Crocus remarks that Rallick scared him. Rallick tells him good and says, "Listen carefully, Crocus. You'll not try Orr's estate. You'll not go near it again." Crocus says, "It was just a thought, Nom." Rallick says, "Kill it." He's not playing around, man.
Oh, he ain't playing around. Rallick is not. There's no sense of humor in this at all. We can't, because this is where they're planning. Mm-hmm. This is their business.
Yep. And this is the plan.
This is the plan.
Crocus's lips thin to a straight line, but he agrees and leaves, feeling Rallick watch him until he leaves the area. He's nearing High Gallows Hill, and I highlighted this quote on my read-through, one of my earlier ones. The 5 nooses above the platform swung slightly in the breeze, their shadows streak of black reaching down the slope to the cobbles of the street. It had been a long time since the last high criminal was hanged. While off in the Gadrobi district, the low gallows ropes were replaced weekly due to stretching, an odd contrast to mark these tense times. End quote. That sounds about right.
Yep.
Sounds
about right.
Nothing's changed.
Nope. Hey, the world has always been divided into, people always think it's like a racial division. It is not. It's the haves and the have-nots. That's how it always has. That's really all it is.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the racial constructions are invented by the haves to keep the have-nots at war with each other. So,
yeah, divide and conquer.
That's right.
As he walks, he begins to wonder if Rallick had been following him, but then casts it aside. The more likely reason is that Rallick has received a contract for Orr or someone in his household.
Or something.
He wonders at the guts of a noble willing to put out a contract on Orr, but also the courage of the contract's offering paled when compared to Rallick's accepting it. Crocus puts his hands in his pockets and discovers the coin he'd found while running on the rooftops. He reflects on the fact that the coin clattered at his feet, saving his life, and wonders where it came from. He looks at the coin. It is poorly minted. It has an image of a man's head on one side and a woman's on the other. There is etching on both sides of the coin in a language Crocus does not recognize. The etchings on both sides appear to be in different languages. Old metal, streaked here and there with raw copper and pitted around their faces with rough tin. And interestingly, the man has an amused look and the woman is serious. I would expect the opposite, given that it's the lady's pull and the lad's push.
Well, maybe not. If the lad is, or the man is the push, then I would think that he's more capricious. So he's more prone to be a trickster and smiling, while the lady is serious while saving people.
It's a little bit malicious.
Yeah. That's what I see in this smile. Is just like, oh, yeah. Loki. It's that beautiful smile that doesn't go all the way up to the eyes.
Yep. That's actually a pretty common thing, that if the smile does not reach a man's eyes, that kind of sets women on edge. Like they know it's a fake smile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How many eye smiles did people see at the returns counter at Fry's Electronics?
From who? You or me?
Both. Did you give genuine smiles?
Dude, I gave genuine smiles.
You're such a nice guy, Billy.
Well, it's also a skill. I learned a couple of tricks in my life, and I will share this with the audience if you wish. It's like there's two things to know in life when talking with people. People's eyes jerk back and forth. If you look at someone in their eyes, always pick one eye. Pick the left eye, because the left eye is wired to the right side of your brain, your logical brain. So you want to make sure that you look them there. They think they're being heard. You don't have to listen to what they're saying. Look at them. They'll think you're saying. Use their name. That's the number two thing. That's what I always do. I look people in the eye and say their name. That's people's favorite word in this world is their name.
I got to tell you something, Billy.
Yes.
You told me this when we worked together.
Uh-huh.
Especially the thing about looking in people's left eye. I have programmed myself ever since you taught me that. I only look at people's left eyes.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate you teaching me that. Like, no I took it to heart. And I think it served me well. I mean, people seem to take me seriously when I'm talking to them. I'm generally a nicer individual now than I was. I was miserable in the retail world. But,
you weren't that bad.
I enjoyed working with you.
Right. But you managers always got. See, the great job about doing returns is that I could always be smiling and happy because if it hit the fan, all I had to do was say, "MIC, please."
That's manager in charge for those of you that are uninitiated into the Fry's
or the PIC, person in charge. Have you watched Nope yet? I watched Nope, and Fry's plays a big part in that movie.
I remember you mentioning that, but I haven't watched it yet.
It plays a large part in that movie. It's hilarious. It's really funny. I think you'd like it. Okay. Sorry about the fries. The fries digression.
I think people will appreciate that little piece of advice that you gave.
Hey, it's a very helpful thing. A lot of people don't know this about, because I used to struggle with where to look at people. Mm-hmm. If you just keep looking, it doesn't matter. Pick one, but the left is the best. I
always notice in the movies that their eyes go back and forth. Have you ever noticed that? The actors, a lot of times they're doing that. They're looking back and forth. They don't.
Yeah, they do.
They're darting around. Yeah. Okay. They didn't have the Billy personality course,
That's the crash course.
Yeah.
For $9.95, I will give you the entire, and the rest of my secrets can be included on the HorseFrog.
HorseFrogopedia.
How to talk to people on the horse.
Oh wait, that's a new class we could offer.
Yes,
at the HorseFrog chapel.
Yes, at the HorseFrog. It's now. Let's just make it an institute now.
Yeah, with a chapel on grounds.
Yes,
right?
yes.
The ordained ministers of the HorseFrog chapel.
There we go. Oh, that's great, dude.
All right, let's reel it back. Yeah.
Okay.
The coin resembles no coin he has ever seen, and he is pretty familiar with a lot of the coinage from the continent. One side note here, the ridged bars of the Segula are mentioned. What a people they are. And I cannot wait to cover them. They're introduced in Memories of Ice for the first time, I believe. Such an amazing
awesome.
Culture.
I love them.
He continues to wonder where it came from. Had it somehow gotten picked up in his clothes, or was it from the young Darl woman? Either way, he is grateful that its appearance had saved his life. As Crocus continues to walk, he sees refugees from Pale entering through one of the city gates. He heads out the east gate of Darujistan. Just outside the walls, he enters an area called Worry Town, then enters a tavern, the Boar's Tears. Oddly, it has a sign with a picture of a three-legged ram outside. Crocus finds Krupa here. Krupa is telling stories. As usual, his mouth is always running. He's telling these stories to a man seated at his table. He mentions, many times afore this had Krupa faced a wraith in some deep pit of Drek. As an aside, Drek was an ascendant goddess known as the Worm of Autumn. She was mentioned in Gothos Folly as the Mistress of Decay and the Mistress of Worms. She sometimes took on the mantle of the Queen of Disease. She was the harbinger of death, which came to all mortals, and the eve of autumn marked the start of the season of Drek, when it was said she came to earth. Although Drek was usually given female titles, Drek was worshipped as either male or female.
I guess another quick question then is, if Mistress of Decay, it was a Queen of Disease, she's not Soleil, is she?
Pauliel. There was one of the wikis claims she's referred to as Pauliel, but that's the only time I've ever seen that connection made. This wiki said nothing of that. So we'll have to dig into that a little bit more and see if there's any connection there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Krupa invites Crocus to join him. The man Krupa is talking with is happy that he can leave and leaves his mug of wine. Krupa takes the mug and says, "Precipitous creature. Ah, look at this. Nigh 2/3 full. Potential waste." He drinks it down in one gulp and sighs. Said potential averted. Decembra be praised. As another aside, a lot of asides tonight.
A lot of asides.
Decembra is also known as the Lord of Tragedy or the Lord of Tears.
So do we get any meats with our sides?
I can't give any meat with this particular meal. You only get sides this time.
Only sides. Okay. But man, Krupa, I know I said previously he's a favorite character. He is and is not. He's a great supporting character, but he is exhausting. And I feel like that poor man, if you had to hang around with him, you'd probably look for any chance to you'd probably gnaw your own arm off to get away from that fella.
I think we all know one or two people that when they get going, at some point you're just looking for an excuse to get out of the conversation.
Yes.
Because it's not a two-sided conversation. It is they're waiting for an opportunity to say words, and then that's it.
Yes. Now, to be fair to my lovely wife, KP, that yes, I can be that. I can sometimes be that exhausting, I think. But,
I don't think so. We have two-sided conversations all the time.
Well, yes, but I'm also you and I are also charming individuals. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I'm not going into this at all. It seems like a trap. I don't want to upset KP, so I'm going to stop.
Well spoken, sir.
Krupa wonders what Crocus is doing here. Crocus wants to know if Krupa has the items he stole from the Darl estate. At first, Krupa begins to give an excuse on not having sold the items yet. Crocus is excited. Krupa begins fishing to see if Crocus is trying to find another fence to give him a better rate. Crocus wants the items back for another reason and assures Krupa that he will always use Krupa as his fence. The items from the Darl estate are different and he wants them back. Krupa tells Crocus he will bring the items this evening, then spots the coin in Crocus' hand and asks him about it. Krupa asks to look at it, and Crocus obliges. Crocus casually mentions to Krupa that he was thinking about Turban Orr's estate next. Krupa is inspecting the coin and talks about the poor casting. He then says, Orr's estate, you say? Krupa advises caution. And Krupa carries on about the coin quite a bit, talking about how it was smelted at too low of a temperature and using these materials, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Krupa asks Crocus to watch the door for him. Krupa says he's looking for a red and green merchant's wagon wobbling into town. Crocus steps outside and surveys the area. He returns and says he saw no one outside. Krupa tells Crocus the coin appears worthless and to get rid of it at his leisure. Crocus says he will keep it for luck. Krupa notices that Crocus is looking at something, and Krupa asks what it is. Crocus says he just picked up some wax on his hands somehow.
And we'll, of course, find out why later, but...
Yeah. Tricky, Krupa.
Really smooth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Krupa says, it will be a fine day for a walk, pronounces Krupa, who is wise in all things, as they both leave.
Oh, man.
Cut to White Gold's round in Darujistan.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I understand this to be a nod to Stephen Donaldson's Thomas Covenant series, which I understand that Erikson is a big fan of that series and a big fan of Donaldson. Donaldson was one of the first people I think reached out across to kind of offer him help maybe or endorsed him or something like that.
Okay. On the topic of Donaldson, or specifically the Thomas Covenant series, I remember what bothered me about that book was he's always like, I'm a leper.
All right.
But okay, so the other day, I can't remember what came up, but I was thinking of leprosy, and I was like, can they cure it? And apparently it's curable now. I didn't know that, because I think back to like Papillon. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
And like the guy had leprosy, and it was so like the old movies, they always leprosy was the end. And I watched that's what made me look it up. I was watching Kingdom of Heaven. Remember the king had leprosy in that?
No, I've not seen. I've not seen that movie. So
you need to watch it. It's good. It's about the Crusades.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Edward Norton is the king of Jerusalem, and he's wearing a mask because he's a leper, and that's what made me look it up. Yeah, I was wondering, if it's still a problem, all that kind of stuff.
Why it was such a big deal for Donaldson is his father was a missionary and dealt he was a doctor, a medical doctor, and was also like a missionary, and was also like took care of lepers. So Donaldson apparently grew up around a bunch of them, so that's why it was such a big deal. And like I said, the big thing for me, you have to realize that as a kid, the only thing that you really had to read was Lord of the Rings. That was, a lot of that stuff was the most modern fantasy was Lord of the Rings.
Dune existed when you were a kid.
I did not know that though. I didn't know to look towards sci-fi as well as I was, because I was looking specifically at fantasy. And I thought the sci-fi was almost completely different. And if I'd have known that, I would have been happy about that. But I got there as quick as I could. And but this was when I read, and it was so different than Lord of the Rings. Because there were some other things out there that were real derivative of Tolkien, but Donaldson's world is so different. And yeah, he's a grating individual, and he's a piece of crap. But he's our hero, because that's the first time I've been introduced to the fact that the hero of the series was not a good person. And that was the other thing. That's the other thing that made it such an interesting thing for me. But I loved that world because it was just for me, it was just different. So I just loved it because it was, I felt like I discovered it myself as opposed to having someone tell me about it. And I did. So I think that's why I have such a love for that series.
Okay, cool. Murillo is asking around at a shop. The shop is in the base of a tower, which is named Hinter's Tower. He is looking for Crute of Talient. And I don't know what it is about this name specifically, but it sticks with me for some reason. I think of it randomly out of the blue.
I do too. And is it because of the fact that we note he's different from the other Crutes? Not that we're introduced to any of them, but this is obviously, there's maybe Crute is a common name, but this guy's from Talient. It's like he's the other Crutes, don't worry about them, fella, but Crute of Talient, dude. And I'm like, it sticks with me because of that whole title, I think. It's like,
okay. Yeah. Murillo says something that is a code phrase, and Crute opens a hidden door. He tells Murillo to enter quickly so no one on the street will see. He also is not pleased to be doing this and tells Murillo to let Rallick know the guild is not happy about telling other non-guild personnel their secrets. Murillo is looking for Rallick and calls out to him. It's dark in the area. Rallick responds from behind him, saying, "You're late." This startles Murillo, who whips out his rapier and spins. He also draws his main gauche and readies it in his other hand. Rallick is impressed with his friend's fighting prowess and mentions he's glad all that wine and parties hasn't dulled Murillo's reflexes much.
Do you think Murillo is one of those players that is at all the parties but never drunk? Always the glass in hand but not really drinking, like holding it to his lips or just checking out possible enemies' weaknesses and possible female conquest?
I think he drinks and just gets better with each drink.
Okay.
Like a drunken master.
Nice. Like Jackie Chan style?
I don't know. I think he gets smoother with each.
Oh, yeah, he probably does, dude. He probably does. I love him.
Because the drunken master thing, the Chinese style one, like Jackie Chan, that's more kind of ridiculous, right?
Oh, it is. It is.
I think there's probably a limit, but yeah. I don't think Murillo doesn't drink.
Right. Okay.
Murillo is surprised to find Rallick here and not deeper in the tower. Rallick's eyes widen and he asks, "Are you mad?" He then informs Murillo that the tower is haunted. Murillo says he always thought that was a rumor that assassins spread to keep prying eyes away. And Rallick tells Murillo that on some nights, the wraiths crowd the entrance. You can walk right up to them, listen to their pleas and threats. Murillo asks about Hinter himself, and Rallick says Hinter sleeps within, and the wraiths are trapped in the sorcerer's nightmares. He holds on to them, and even Hood cannot draw them to his cold bosom. Do you wish to know where those wraiths come from, Murillo? Enter the tower, and you'll discover it firsthand. Murillo sarcastically snaps, "Thanks for the warning." He then tells Rallick he has the invitations to the festival. Rallick asks, "You've not seen Krupa's nose twitch?" Murillo says no, Krupa hasn't figured out what they're up to yet. He also says he talked with Krupa earlier today, and Krupa said Crocus is making some bizarre demands. When he dropped by the Phoenix Inn, Krupa was delivering to Crocus the stolen merch from Crocus's last job. After some talk, Murillo figures it out. He thinks Crocus is in love with the Darl Maiden. Murillo says, of all the hopeless dreams a boy could have, he's reached for the worst. Rallick says, maybe not. A word to his uncle. Murillo begins to get hope. He says, a nudge in the right direction? Yes, finally. Mamet will be pleased. Rallick cautions, patience. Turning a thieving child into a man of standing will require more work than a swooning heart will manage. Murillo is almost offended and says, forgive me for being so excited at the prospect of saving the lad's life. Rallick smiles and says, never regret such pleasure.
That's another reason why I like Rallick so much. He is genuinely pleased with the idea of Crocus becoming a gentleman, or not even becoming a gentleman, but just not being in the life that they're in.
Yeah, they truly care about him, and they don't want him to follow in their path.
Yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm. And again, Rallick, he just does not, his mentality, nothing is out of reach for him.
No.
He was like, okay, maybe it's not the most unobtainable goal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what?
You know, it's kind of, it's for a guy that's in an occupation that's more of a pessimistic by nature. He's actually kind of like the optimist.
Yeah.
As if for an assassin, it's like.
I mean, maybe it's just the ultimate confidence. Nothing
it could be.
Gets in his way.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Yeah. Murillo notes Rallick's reaction and says, it's been many years since we had so many things of hope to strive for.
I find this whole interaction with both of them, and we know that Crocus mentions that these are his friends, but that these guys are more than friends. You know, they do love him it's very deep, and I'm quite touched by that in a weird way. It's the brotherhood.
Yeah, and then the camaraderie between these two in particular.
Yes.
You know, they're smiling, you know, they have a really close friendship, and then we'll find out more about why they're doing what they're doing as the book progresses. But very deep bonds among this group. Yeah,
very deep. I love it.
Rallick notes the path to one will be bloody, and not to forget that. But he agrees it's been a long time. He wonders if Krupa even remembers such days. Murillo snorts and says, Krupa's memory is revised hourly. All that holds him together is fear of being discovered. Rallick questions this. Murillo collects himself and says, "They are worn suspicions, no more. Krupa is a slippery one." Rallick mentions Kroot will want to close up and the two men leave the tower. Murillo turns back to attempt another chance at seeing the wraiths. He only sees a dark doorway, which is somehow more disturbing to him.
Real quick, back to Kroot. Maybe Kroot is part of a family of retailers, and this is Kroot's Italian versus Kroot's of one-eyed cat. Or,
Yep.
Oh.
We are taken to Baruch's house. It is morning, and Baruch is in his study looking at a map of the continent. He is applying a red wash to the map to indicate where the Malazan Empire has taken over. The north half of the map is red, except for a small strip south of Black Dog Forest, indicating Caladan Brood's forces, and another spot indicating the Crimson Guard's location. Baruch notes that the street noise outside his apartment has become quite loud. He hears the squeal of winches and a voice bellowing at passers-by. Suddenly there is a loud cracking noise. The noise causes Baruch to spill the red wash on the map, and as the red spot from the spilled wash covers the map, Baruch wonders if this is an omen, indicating that the Malazan Empire will indeed take over the city of Darujistan. Baruch cleans up the mess and looks at the workers outside his window. Baruch can see 2 burly men working and 3 others are removing the debris from the roadwork. The foreman stands nearby the wagon studying some plans. Baruch wonders who's in charge of road maintenance. As he is looking out of his window, Roald, Baruch's servant, knocks. When beckoned, Roald announces that he has a visitor, one of his agents. Baruch tells Roald to make him wait for a minute. The agent is Krupa. He is slick enough to have entered the room while Roald is trying to detain him from outside of Baruch's office. There is an exchange between Krupa and Baruch, mostly pleasantries. Krupa reflects on the road workers outside and that they were a rather belligerent lot. Indeed rude, but hardly exceptional for such menial laborers. Krupa is remarking on how hot the day is and is eyeballing a carafe of wine. Baruch ignores this and asks Krupa what he has heard.
Oh, I don't love how irritating Krupa gets in this conversation about that wine.
Oh, yeah, it's great. That actually makes me laugh in this scene.
It does.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
good.
He in this scene, he actually makes me laugh. He's not going on too bad, yeah. Krupa says, "What has Krupa heard? What hasn't Krupa heard?" Baruch says, "How about brevity?" Krupa shifts in his chair and mops his brow, complaining again about the heat. So that's the second time he's trying to get the wine.
And now I have another question for you. It's like, is there a magic spell that makes people's rags always like dripping wet? Because I always imagine for some reason Krupa has a dripping wet handkerchief he's mopping his head with, and he's probably not even that hot, but it's like an affectation. It's like the dripping rag. It's like,
he's always probably sweaty. I mean, I can tell you, when I used to weigh 80 pounds more than I do right now, I was always hot. Okay. Now I get cold all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Even when I was fatter, I still did. I was always cold when it's cold. I wasn't one of these guys that's like, yeah, I'll get cold when I'm. It's like, no, I still got cold when I was fat.
I was always hot.
Okay.
Yeah. Krupa begins rambling, and Baruch gets irritated, saying, "Get on with it." Krupa tells Baruch that the Assassin's Guild is taking losses. Baruch wants to know where the thieves stand. Krupa says the rooftops are getting crowded and that throats are being slit. It's affecting business in the Thieves Guild. Baruch asks about Rallick's location. Krupa tells Baruch that Rallick has disappeared. Baruch then asks if this is an internal matter in the Assassin's Guild. Krupa indicates that it is not. Baruch asks if the threat has been identified. Krupa indicates it has not. Baruch looks again at the workers outside his window and notes that they spend more time arguing than working.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. Baruch reflects on the fact that Vorkin's Assassin's Guild is strong, but the Empire is stronger, if indeed the newcomers were claws. But something felt decidedly odd about the whole thing. In the past, the Empress would recruit the local guilds to do their dirty work, recruiting claw members from the local talent. Baruch dismisses Krupa. Krupa tells Baruch there is more, and tells him that it appears that Opan has become involved, or some ascendant trying to mislead and make it appear that Opan is involved. Perhaps a grim feint meant to mislead such as foolish Krupa. Baruch thinks Krupa is anything but foolish, even though that is the mask that Krupa always wears. Krupa shows Baruch a wax impression he made of the coin that Crocus had.
Why there's wax on Crocus's hand? Yeah, what a slick operator, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, if he was the master that Crocus apprenticed under for thievery, sleight of hand is definitely in his wheelhouse, right? Krupa is telling Baruch about the coin. As he does so, Baruch becomes aware of the fact that Krupa has vast stores of knowledge. Baruch has indeed caught a glimpse into Krupa's mind. The knowledge Krupa possesses is enough to surprise Baruch. Krupa shows the wax impression of the coin to Baruch. Krupa keeps going on about how hot it is and again mops his brow. Third time. Baruch tells Krupa to help himself to some wine. Baruch has opened his warren to examine the coin. As Baruch examines the coin, Krupa is speaking. Even the semblance, Master Baruch, blows the twins' breath. No mage's warren can withstand that wind. The coin is spinning in the air. A light blue tinged fire is flickering around the edges of the coin as it spins. As the spinning wax coin dissolves, the spinning sound it makes stops, and there is an almost audible pop as the pressure disappears. As the coin disappears, Baruch's head is filled with pain. He asks Krupa who holds the coin. Krupa tells Baruch it is in the hands of someone Krupa knows, and Baruch's other agents too. The other agents being Murillo, Rallick, and Call.
I love that all these are Crocus's best friends.
Yeah. It's interesting that they're all agents together. Yeah. Baruch tells Krupa to gather them all and to be ready. He lets it slip that all these men have served Baruch for a while, and they must make sure and follow Baruch's orders in this matter. Krupa tells Baruch he will let the other men know. He also says that Rallick may be caught up in guild matters, while Call, given purpose in life once again, might well steady his gaze and tread and take this mission to heart. Krupa then asks what the mission is. Baruch says the mission is to protect the coin bearer. Krupa says, understood. Alas, may mercy smile upon young Crocus. Baruch thinks he knows this name. Krupa says nothing, his face remaining blank. Krupa thanks Baruch for the wine. Baruch is reflecting on the fact that Opon has a way of ruining plans and that he can't rely on his ability to predict or to prepare contingencies. Adding to his troubles are the mysterious ways of the Empress. He rubs his brow, thinking he will have to have Roald bring him some healing tea. While rubbing his brow, he notes how his hands are stained red from the ink. He looks through the window and whispers, "And you, Empress, I know you're here, somewhere. Your pawns more unseen as yet, but I will find them. Be sure of that, with or without Opon's damned luck."
Oh, I know it.
It
is. I love it.
It's great irony, isn't it? And thus, Chapter 7 ends. What are your standout moments?
It's different. It's such an unusual. It's not an unusual chapter. It's just one of our plot chapters, and I love. There's a lot of good plots being formulated here. I love Orr telling Simtel how simple she was. When he just really checks her with that, that's really great. And for some reason, even though it's kind of small, I like Krupa meeting Krull. I don't know what there is about that. I just enjoy the introduction of Krull and the more that we know later on. It's just we don't get a lot of glimpses of these elder beings, and I like him meeting him.
Yeah, that's a good point because that introduces some really important concepts, particularly the relationship between the worshippers and the gods,
and how it almost is a little different with the elder gods versus the child gods, as Krull says. I'm curious if there's a different relationship or if it's all the same for all of them.
I interpret it as the same for all of them.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking too, but just curious. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. I appreciated Murillo manipulating Lady Orr, showing his skills. That was pretty nice.
Murillo is the man. I forget that too.
Yep. The insight into Circle Breaker's motivations was interesting. Also, his decision to stick with the path, even though it was the more difficult choice.
Yes.
He could have taken the easy route out.
Yeah, that's right.
The meeting between Murillo and Rallick at Hinter's Tower, the way Rallick scared him, that was funny. And then them seeing the possibility of a brighter future, that was heartwarming. I like that.
It is. It's very heartwarming. And for some reason, I love this location. And the idea of these ghosts trapped there by Cinter's Wraith is very intriguing.
Hinter.
Sorry, Hinter's. I don't know why I put center.
Mm-hmm.
Hinter's tower, but I love that idea, and it's such a strange. It's funny because this does come into play actually in one of those Esselmont books, because we meet Hinter in that. In one of those books, I can't remember which one.
I need a refresher on that. I don't remember which one that was. Yeah,
he's not a huge player in it, but there's people that are kind of big players that are kind of working with him. And nothing is thrown away. I've discovered when you read both of these series together that nothing is left to dangle. I don't think. I think they almost. It seems like
I was
everything.
really. Yeah, you read the core 10 books by Erikson, and there's some significant plot holes if you don't read the Esselmont stuff.
Yeah.
But then Esselmont ties, I think, almost all of them up.
I think so.
The big ones for sure.
Yeah. And I'm still, like I said, I'm still reading. I guess I'm on the last 2 books, so I'm curious where this goes. But yeah, I've really discovered that about him, and they've been quite entertaining. I've really enjoyed them too. I've enjoyed Esselmont's books. They've been quite entertaining.
Right. And then Krupa wearing Baruch down about the wine. Loved it.
Love it. That's a great scene.
Hilarious.
Boy, it sure is hot out here. It's hot out here. But, ooh.
Hint.
Wipe that wet rag across my. Boy, it's sure hot in here, man. I love it. But it was a great chapter. Again, it's a plot building chapter, but a good chapter nonetheless.
Yeah, I thought it was entertaining. Yeah, I mean, I liked having more insight into Murillo and Rallick's relationship.
Yeah.
That was pretty important, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that.
That's a very driving
and
thing
then
for them.
Lady Simtal showing her true colors.
Oh, yeah.
We got a little glimpse of it when she was talking to Lim,
yeah,
I believe. But now, we're seeing what a snake she is.
Oh, yeah, she's a vicious little thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's something else.
Do you have any final thoughts?
No, man, this is a great episode.
Yeah, good job tonight.
Yeah, great job. And as always, folks, we do thank you for listening to us.
Yes, thank you. See you next week. We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.